Ladies and gentlemen, a great pleasure to have Michael Brandt with me, and we are also live on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Live, the first time for my podcast together with Michael Brandt. It's really a big pleasure because I can say we are CX friends. We met the first time in UK several years ago, and from this point in time, we are always in contact, and this is great. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, thanks for inviting me, Gregorio.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. You have really big experience. You are well known on the market, on the customer experience side. It's really outstanding to have you here, and thank you that you find time during the European Championship also to have a chat about customer experience.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And as usual, I start every podcast in the same way. I would like that you introduce yourself because you know better who you are than me reading from a list of what you did in the past.
Sure, yes, no problem. So I actually really started my career. I actually started my career in the airline business. I was there for a few years, but it's the airline business is a bit of a professional roller coaster. So I ended up changing and moving to industrial automation with ABB. I was involved in the turbocharger business and started off in technology transfer, and then spent 7 years in Japan as president of a joint venture. And that is really where I got to my passion for customer experience. It was amazing to see how Japanese companies dealt with their customers. And so we had a lot of really good experiences there. And then I came back and was involved in quality management and customer quality, and was then asked to join the ABB headquarters to be in charge of their voice of customer program and their complaint management process. And I did that up till the end of last year, so end of 2019.
Thank you, Michael, and great introduction. From my side, one additional question. Even
Sure.
if you said you did that until last year, now you are really active under different brands. And if people are following you in LinkedIn, we see how big your passion is for customer experience. Where did everything started with your passion for customer experience?
Well, I say it was in Japan, really, because the Japanese culture has such a focus on customer satisfaction. We had many experiences there, which were absolutely amazing, both in my work and outside, in retail. For instance, we had a case where we had a foot spa that we had purchased, and we'd had it in a cupboard for a couple of years. It never really worked properly. But to dispose of electric equipment in Japan is very expensive, so we took it back to the store to ask them to dispose of it, and they insisted, even though it was out of warranty and it was more than 2 years, they insisted on giving us the money back. Because they said it was inconceivable for them that anybody should have a product of theirs that they were unhappy with. And this whole culture and focus on customers showed me that it's absolutely possible to be customer focused and to be customer oriented without necessarily spending a huge amount of money. It's really very much about culture in a company, and also customer focus and just the way of acting. And that was also very clear in the way that my Japanese colleagues within the joint venture, the way they expected us to act towards our customers in Japan. And so when I came back to Europe, I brought this passion with me and got into this relationship with customers and how it can be improved. And I think in many cases we fail because we don't do very simple things. So if you like, my mission, I think, is to go out and to preach already these basics that can make such a big difference when it comes to customer service and customer experience.
I think I fully agree with you. Before starting speaking about wow moments and all these topics that perhaps we can discuss later, it's important to have the basics right, and they need to work properly.
Yes.
In the pre-discussion, we also start discussing about trainings, and on customer experience side, I think there are quite a lot of opportunities to get a certification and accreditation, a certificate saying that that you are expert. And in some cases, it's about really studying for that. You are a C6P, I am also C6P. And in other cases, it's only participating to half-a-day workshop. What's your view on all these trainings that are at the moment on the market?
I think there are too many certificates, right? And I think it must be difficult for people who are new to the CX industry, who want to get a certification, who want to show some professional qualification, and also for companies who are looking for people to join them, to hire people who are qualified when it comes to customer experience. It's difficult for them to figure out, okay, which are the good ones, which are the not so good ones, and I think that's a problem. I think it would be great if the CX industry could find some standard, some common standard, a little bit like as we discussed the CFA, that we could say, okay, this is the industry standard for customer experience. This is the qualification, and then I think it would take away all that uncertainty, and would be a big step forward, because I think, you know, then we know what we're talking about. It's possible also maybe to do it in degrees, so a little bit like, you know, the judo, you know, the belt system, you know, to start off with beginners, let's say, you know, with I'm not a judoka, so I don't know exactly which order the colors go in, but if we're looking at, let's say, Six Sigma, you know, the belts, so starting off with the, you know, with a white belt, the yellow belt, right, and then going to the green belt and the black belt. So we could, you know, there could be something set up like that, taking into account, for instance, the experience that the person has acquired, how many years they've been in the business, what kind of projects they've completed, and I think this would be a lot more valuable, and also say more about the candidate than the systems that we have in place at the moment. So I think there's certainly room for development there.
I fully agree with what you are saying, but on the other side, also to bring a bit other view on that, if there are so many trainings, so many certification, it means that now customer experience is getting relevant, and it means companies are interested in doing that. And for sure, not everybody has the most professional ones, but at least it started a discussion. And we are also seeing and as you said, in Japan there is another culture around customer experience compared to Europe, and therefore it's important to progress and to have this discussion.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, you know, the more that the customer experience is spoken about, you know, especially within companies, the better it is. You know, I think it's the more visible it is on the C-suite radar and senior managers' radar, the better chance we have of developing customer experience across the board. So yes, I absolutely agree with that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying it's an area where we could improve to try and find some kind of an industry standard. You know, that's.
Sure, and I think what I really like, and I am always mentioning, is the customer experience community. These are these experts like you and other people that are approachable, that we can discuss, and we already also had a discussion around some topics, because I was asking you some hints about what you are doing, and you were also with me discussing some topic and some areas where I have the expertise, and I really like that. And then I am coming also to the next question, and this is around this organization in the different groups. And now we are seeing that the European customer experience organization is growing quite quickly, is extremely successful. Perhaps what's the idea behind the European customer experience organization?
Yeah, the European Customer Experience Organization started off in spring this year, and we now have about 500 members. So that's really good. The ECXO was created to allow a forum where European customer experience practitioners and professionals could come and exchange views, not just in their own languages, right? Because we have groups for each of the different countries, but also generally with a more, let's say, European flavor, right? I mean, there are quite a few different organizations that are out at the moment. Of course, there's a CXPA, and you and I are both members, and that's probably, you know, the industry leader. The main forum, but I don't think that anybody can deny that CXPA is a little bit more oriented towards a North American culture. And when it comes to customer experience, culture is a very important part. And so sometimes, you know, some of the solutions that may work well in North America wouldn't work in Europe. I have some excellent examples from a previous employer who had some ideas that they implemented in the US, and if you would have tried those in Europe, it would have been very, very counterproductive, right? Just by virtue of cultural issues, right? And so we wanted to really create a place where Europeans could come together and really discuss issues and solutions with a European flavor. That being said, you don't absolutely have to be in Europe to be a member. So we have, I think we have at least one member I know of who's from Australia, one from Indonesia, and a few from the Middle East. So it's an open forum, and I think what I like really also about ECXO is that it's a place where there are a lot of different opinions, but the discussion is always carried out in a respectful and a civilized manner. So that's I think that's really important too, that people should feel free to voice their opinion, even if it's a dissenting opinion or let's say non-agreement, without necessarily think that, okay, then they're going to get insulted or you know, this wouldn't be okay. And we have plans in the future for ECXO to expand our cooperation with some of the big names in the CX business as partners, so that we really have access to the latest information and about state-of-the-art theories, technologies that are available, and also coming back to what we were discussing earlier, also offering training programs also. So,
thank you, Michael. And full disclosure, as you said, that I am a member of the CXPA, but I'm also a member of the European Customer Experience Organization. And what you are saying, I can say it's really nice to follow the discussion and to see the different ideas, but discussed always in a respectful way. And I think it's also important in Europe, because we are living in Europe, to have something that has European flavor, because in the different continents we are in a different development in customer experience. I see North America that they are the leading, because they are already some step ahead in comparison to where we are, and like also Middle East. If I think about Dubai, I had a chat with Farhan Niaz, and what they are doing in Dubai, it's really in future for us. Sure. But at the end, it's really important to have this European flavor and to understand who is working in customer experience in Europe, in our case in Switzerland, and also having this exchange, because at the end it's all about having the right connection, speaking to people, and get the best ideas.
Absolutely. And as I said, being a member of ECXO doesn't prevent one from being a member of CXPA either, right? I mean, these aren't, it's not a competition, right? I think, we need to tap into the knowledge base that's available, and these organizations allow us to do that. And I think that's important.
No, sure. And at the end, it's not like a soccer team that you have only one that you like, but you can be part of more than one.
Luckily, I like more than one soccer team also. So
Exactly. It was really a great introduction. And now perhaps some topics around something that for quite a lot of people it's new, but it's not really new. And we are speaking about customer experience in the business to business world.
yeah.
And you are really a big expert. What's your view? What are the differences between customer experience in B2B and B2C?
Well, I think the first thing is that when you're talking about customer experience in B2B, you're looking at trying to convince several people rather than one or two people about a product, right? So when you buy something in B2B, very often you have a whole purchasing committee that's involved. You have supply chain, you have people who are operations, you have the finance department, right? So you have to really cater to all these stakeholders when you're trying to sell something to them. It's not like B2C where, if you're buying, let's say someone's buying a new cell phone, it's very emotional, and yes, they do their research, obviously, and look at the specs. But at the end of the day, it's one person or two people making a decision. It's not a whole committee. And then also in B2B, very often you're looking at a product life cycle. So you really have to take into account, how long the product is going to be used for, what are going to be the needs during that life cycle, and how long is its life, and what happens when it needs to be replaced. And actually, the moment that you have sold your product, you're also then should be concentrating on, and how am I going to convince this person to replace this product with one of my products when it's finished. And so it's a whole process, and that's where customer service and customer support really becomes important in B2B. I'm not saying that it's not important in B2C, but in B2B, this is what is going to make your name, right? I mean, I remember sitting in on a presentation once by somebody who was representing a mining company, and he was telling us a story about how there'd been a service issue at a mine in Australia, and within half a day, that story had already been transmitted to their mine in South Africa. And then within, let's say, a week, it had already been transmitted to another mine in South America. And so when the service guy turned up to do the service a week later in South America, the guys were telling him, okay, and you don't make the same mistakes as they made in Australia a week ago, right? Word gets around very quickly. And so you have to really be careful that you get things in perspective in this service. The other big difference, of course, is the volume. I mean, if we're talking about customer experience in B2B and B2C, generally in B2B, you tend to have a much closer connection to the customer than you might do in B2C. I mean, we're talking about key account managers, we're talking about issues where if there's a breakdown, the person is not going to call a contact center, he's going to call his contact, his key account manager or the service manager, and say, yeah, I have a problem, I need you to come and fix it. So we're also talking here about relationships. which also very important. So these one-on-one relationships, and it's why very often you hear of customer and supplier going out and playing golf together and things like that, which of course wouldn't necessarily happen in the B2C environment, and very rarely, but in the B2B environment, it's not so unusual. And so relationships are important too. And also, if you're dealing with customer data, then also you also have different volumes. I mean, if you're talking about Apple and doing feedback research on let's say an iPhone, the kind of volumes of data they're going to get are going to be much bigger than a company that sells, let's say, generators, large generators, or power grids, like ABB, where I used to work. So the volumes of data are different, and also the ability then to follow up with customers is much greater, because you have that kind of relationship with them. So those I see as being the big differences between CX in the B2B and the B2C environment.
Thank you, Michael. I think you mentioned really quite a lot of interesting topics. I am not sure that we can cover all of them today, but you are already invited to the second half of the discussion, perhaps later. One topic that I would like to deep dive is, you mentioned quite a lot stakeholder management, volume, and the relationship with this key account manager. And nowadays we are always hearing, on the B2C side we have customer service, and on the B2B side we have this customer success team.
Right.
What are the key success factors for this customer success team?
I think customer success starts actually before you've sold the product. Customer success is about finding the best solution for what your customer wants to achieve. So the customer might do their research, and they might say, okay, they might come to you and say, okay, well, I'd like to order this, or they might actually come to you with their problem and say, this is the issue that I have. This is what I want to resolve. And customer success is then looking at the customer situation and proposing or recommending the best possible solution for the customer. I think this is what customer success is about, and then obviously supporting them once the product has been sold to achieve those objectives. Customer service, I think, is just the ongoing support that you have once you've sold the product, or also before, in the run-up, providing information, and but obviously, in a B2C environment, it's not as tailor-made as in the B2B environment. And I think that's the difference between customer success and customer service. So customer success is really focusing on a specific customer's requirements and objectives, and trying to propose and ascertain what the best solution is for them to reach those objectives.
If I try to summarize what you're saying at the end, you said it starts before you're selling, it's during the selling, and then earlier you mentioned it's also to sell the next one. Sure. By the next renewal cycle. It means there are also customer journeys, and in the B2B world that are mapped and they are created. Is this correct?
Absolutely. And it's interesting, but very often it's your performance during that, the life cycle that can very much influence what happens later. I have a story of one company that I worked for, of a project that we had that we really messed up. The specifications were wrong, and the plant never really achieved the output that it should have done. But over the years, we really made our best efforts to try and get it right. And then there was the project for the follow-on, or for the extension of this plant, was put out to tender, and we bid. But we figured that we had absolutely no chance at all, in light of the problems that we'd had. And surprisingly enough, we were actually given the contract. And so we went back and we said, okay, after all the problems that we had, why did you give us the follow-up contract? And they said, because A, you put so much effort into trying to figure out what the problem was and putting it right, first of all. And secondly, we knew that you weren't going to make the same mistake again. And so, you know, even when things go wrong, and I think this is the whole service recovery paradox, right? That even if things go wrong, if the customer sees that you're really trying to make an effort to put things right, and I think this is something that customers appreciate, even if you don't manage, and I think this is important to know, even if you don't necessarily succeed, if a customer sees that you have done everything you could possibly do to put a problem right, then I think customers appreciate that. You know, as I say, even if you don't succeed.
I think this is a great piece of advice, and this is also in the B2C world. At the end, we are all humans, we make mistakes, but the question is the willingness that we have to fix the mistakes and to empathize also with other people. It's really interesting, and it's a bit a strange question. I don't know if you have an answer, but my question would be, in the B2C world, where we speak about Zappos, about Ritz-Carlton, Southwest Airline as the best in class for customer experience.
Right.
Which companies are the best in class in the B2B world?
I think that's difficult to say, because you know the industries are so different, and they tend to keep their cards fairly close to their chest. I think, you know, there are some big players, for instance, in the industry that I was involved in, when you were talking about, you know, big companies like GE or ABB, of course, or Siemens, for instance. These are companies that have excellent reputations. And what's, of course, important is also the technology. You know, customers are very often impressed with technological advances, how much a company is spending on R&D, what kind of advances they're making, and this can affect the reputation in B2B. Of course, it's same in B2C, right? But certainly it can make a big difference in B2B. What other companies have great reputations? Difficult to say. I think you know, there are a lot out there, and I think that we also have to look at some of the smaller companies that do their work in an excellent manner on a day-to-day basis. And I think, you know, this is a little bit of a pity sometimes, that we tend to focus on, you know, on these big companies, and there are small companies out there doing an excellent job every day, day in, day out. And I think we have to recognize that we don't necessarily know who they are, but we should nevertheless, you know, recognize them and say, you know, great job. Where you're out there, you know, you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
It's really nice to see also the parallels to the B2C world, because at the end there are really quite a lot of small shops also during COVID crisis that did an outstanding job. If I think also next to us, there are quite a lot of small shops. You go there, they know your name, they know your preferences, they know what you want, they know quick, slow service, and they ask also some question. I have a small son, and they always ask, how is the small son, and all these questions. And at the end, they don't have a CRM in place with all this information. It's everything inside, but they are using it.
And I think you're absolutely right when you say there are a lot of parallels between B2B and B2C. Of course there are, because ultimately, you know, we're dealing with human beings. And one of the things I've noticed, you know, over the past year or so, is we talk a lot about data analytics. You know, people are saying surveys are out of fashion. Surveys are dying off. Customers don't like surveys anymore. We should really be focusing on gathering data. And absolutely, I think the data has its place. And I also agree that there are a lot of surveys out there that are badly designed and there's no follow-up and they shouldn't exist. But I found that if a survey is well designed and there's a very, very strong process, follow-up process behind it, feedback to the customers about, what lessons have been learned from the survey, what's going to be done, that it can really trigger a dialogue with the customers. And of course, here again, B2B has an advantage over B2C by virtue of the numbers, right? The volume. But we found, certainly when I was at ABB, we found that when we started our NPS program, it really created a dialogue with a lot of customers who said, it's nice to know that we're being listened to. It's nice to know that you're actually telling us what we've been telling you, coming back and showing that you've listened. The whole follow-up discussions were amazing in many cases because customers felt that they were being involved also in finding the solution. So it created a bonding exercise. And we had customers sometimes writing to us and saying, when is your next survey? I have things I want to say. And we'd say, well, you don't have to wait for the survey to tell us what you want to say, right? And then we had in another country when we were talking about changing the rhythm and extending the time between the surveys so as not to annoy, or the customers as they would say, no, we want them because these surveys, they always lead to discussions which are very fruitful, a dialogue, and so we really want to keep this framework. So done properly, they can really bring a lot. And I think, as I said, we have to remember that customers are human beings. And gathering data is fine, but I think we also need to look for opportunities to maintain this dialogue with our customers. And this is one way of doing it.
Thank you. And I think it was really amazing to have this discussion with you and outstanding inputs. Now it's time to learn a bit more about you. Michael, I'm always saying Michael or Michael at the end. It's the same as the German or the English one. Sorry for that.
No.
I know that you have quite a lot of activities. And my question is, how can you ensure with this setup, with this COVID situation and everything what is happening in our world to have a satisfactory work-life balance?
I think that obviously now I'm working from home, so for the past year, so that's been I must say I've enjoyed it very much. It's given me a lot more time to spend at home with my wife and of course also with my dog. I get to go walking with him every day, and that I really enjoy. It's something that I couldn't do when I was in the office. I think that the whole work from home issue that has risen since the beginning of COVID, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, people being able to work from home, not having to commute, and being able to juggle things at home, on one hand positive, on the other hand it can be a challenge. Clearly, if you have children who are not yet in school age and you have to manage them at home, that's not my case. But I can empathize with people who are in a situation like that. Not easy to do, right? But on the other hand, I think also, again, we're human beings, and a lot of people like the whole social aspect of going to work. Talking to colleagues face to face. Chatting at the around the coffee machine, going for lunch to the canteen. And so I think for some people this was another challenge, not being able to do this and being cut off. But we've seen, I think, from the reaction to to companies saying, okay, now we want our staff back in the office. we see, you know, how many people are saying, well, no, actually, I'd rather be more flexible and not work the whole time from the office. So I think this has been really a turning point, and it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the next year or so. Are we going to see companies downsizing their office space and saying, okay, we're going to have a lot smaller offices, more people working from home, or at least part of the week, and have then these hot desks where, you know, you come in, nobody has their actually assigned desk, but you come in and grab whichever one's free, and you just plug your stuff in, and that's it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. It's I don't think it's quite finished yet. It's really an evolution, but of course, then, you know, companies are going to have to adapt also, because we've been dealing with this now for a year, where companies make the excuse, COVID, you know, people are working from home, processes are slower, you know. I think people are getting fed up with this excuse, and companies are going to have to decide, okay, well, how are we going to work now? If we've got people working from home, how can we make the processes, how can we adapt them so that we get back to efficient working, so we don't keep having to tell our customers, sorry, but COVID, you know, I think this get out of jail free card is starting to wear out. So yeah.
Sure, and I think we are at the beginning of the next phase, and we are developing the next phase, understanding how the new way of working will be in future. And then the end, it will have positive sides, as you mentioned. It will have negative sides, and we need to find the right balance. But at the end, only something that you didn't mention yet was one thing is also the opportunity for a company. If you need to hire somebody, it's not only in Zurich, but you can find through the globe the best person for the job. Then it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that remote working opens up a lot more opportunities to opens up also the pool of talent for companies. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question I would like to ask, is there a book that you are reading, or you say this is one book that I would suggest to the audience, that's something that where you can learn something?
Yeah, I certainly think that if you're a CX beginner, then I would certainly recommend Ian Golding's book, you know, Customer One. I think that his book is really great for somebody who's just starting out in customer experience. It really gives them a good overview of customer experience in general, in a language that's very easy to understand. So I think that's a good thing. And then the other one is the book I think that you also contributed to very recently. So I think that's also good. It's a series, if I'm not mistaken, it was the third book in the series, right? And I think that's really great, because it's they're short chapters that cover various different topics. So in this book, you actually get a whole load of different views on different topics, and so I think that is also really good value for money. So that's so you can plug. I'm giving you an opportunity to plug your own book, or you're a co-author at least. I think it's really a good initiative.
Thank you, Michael. And again, full disclosure, I did not ask Michael to say that.
No, he didn't. He didn't pay me either. So no. Jen, I have read it, and I thought it was it was great work. You know, it's a good idea to bring all these people together with their different viewpoints, their different focus areas. It's so it covers a lot in a small and very, very well-priced booklet.
Thank you very much for the feedback. I'm more than happy to pay you a coffee or a beer the next time we meet. If somebody from the audience would like to connect with you, to contact you, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, certainly I'm always happy to connect to people on LinkedIn, and otherwise they can contact me through my email address, which is info@CX, of course, cx-excellence.com. So info@cx-excellence.com. And of course, LinkedIn also, as I said, always happy to connect.
Yes, and if you are not following Michael, please do that, because it's really creating a lot of value added and you can learn quite a lot. Michael has always the right story for the right topic, and it's really outstanding to follow him. And now we are coming to my really last question, and this is Michael golden nugget. It's something that we discussed or we didn't discuss that you would leave to the audience.
Right. I think the really important thing is always to remember that customers are human, and we talk a lot about empathy, and empathy is important, but you can only empathize if you really try and put yourself in the customer's shoes. I notice that very often, particularly, talking about stories, when I was working in the airline business, I was a station manager for an airline in Munich, in Germany, for a while. And I realized that travel is very stressful for a lot of people. For some people, it's fine. They love travel. It's not a problem. But for a lot of people, it's very stressful. And this stress manifests itself in different ways. And so they would arrive at the airport, and sometimes they would get into an argument with one of the check-in agents or something like that. And I would be called over. And it was always important to try and find out, what's the problem? Why is this person so stressed? They could have been traveling because a loved one was ill or had passed away, and, or they could be traveling with two very small, let's say a parent traveling alone with two very small children, also not so easy, very stressful. There are so many different reasons why people get stressed when traveling. And so it was really important to try and figure out, why people get stressed, why they were upset, and what the contributing factors were. And I think that's the same for any business. In customer service, if customers are irritated or angry or stressed, we should try and find out what the cause is. And once we've done that, then very often it makes it a lot easier to solve the problem.
Thank you very much, Michael. And as usual, I am not commenting your golden nugget because it's Michael golden nugget. The last thing I want to say is thank you very much for your time, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Gregorio, and I look forward to that beer.
Sure, and also to the audience and our colleagues following us on the LinkedIn Live. It was again a great discussion with Michael. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion as I did, because I really like the passion that Michael is spreading about customer experience. Thank you very much. Grazie mille. Arrivederci.
Grazie, ciao.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share the word of mouth, subscribe it, share it. Until the next episode, please don't forget, we are not in a B2B or B2C business, we are in a human-to-human environment. Thank you!